do that in California, by the way.
Yes, sir.
California's a mess. We're giving billions and billions of dollars for forest fires in California. There's no reason for those fires to be like they are. They're leaving them dirty. It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry. And instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them. And we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars to fix. And the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests, because it's disgraceful.
So we got to talk today about the catastrophic wildfires that are currently engulfing the state of California. And obviously my prayers are out to everyone who is affected. I grew up in Southern California. I've lived through this myself. My whole family is still there. So praise God. You know, I know some of you guys have asked about this. They are fine, but a lot of people are not. And so, you know, again, prayers to everyone who is affected. I don't know what else to say beyond that. It's just a really bad situation. But with that said, you know, I do think there is a political discussion that needs to be had about this, because the Democrats, on one hand, are using this opportunity, as they always do, whether it's a hurricane or a storm or a flood or wildfire. They're going on to make this whole thing about climate change. You see here from Senator Bernie Sanders, he's going out and saying that climate change is real, not a hoax. Donald Trump must treat this like the existential crisis that it is, right? And this is what they always do. Every single time they use this as an opportunity to push their doomsday cult. Now, the funny thing about it is they are completely and utterly wrong about this. There is no proof that man-made fossil fuels are causing the current drought in California. And I will show you that evidence backed by actual science, okay, later in this video. And I think it's very important, because these people constantly smugly run around claiming to be all about the science, and all those dumb hillbilly rednecks don't know what they're talking about. But actually, what they are preaching to you is complete pseudoscience. And I will show you that proof using the actual science later in this video. But with that said, you know, the sense in which I think it's fair to make the situation political is on the leadership of the state of California, because we need to be totally clear about this, guys. This is not something that blindsided California. This is not exactly a surprise, like how could this happen? No, wildfires have been destroying the state time and time again for the past several years, and the Gavin Newsom, the Democrat leadership there, does absolutely nothing to stop it. And instead of reading and talking about that myself, I'll show you what Donald Trump had to say, because he has been bringing up this issue for years. Democrats ridicule him while their own state is burning, and of course they run around and blame right-wingers for climate change every time their mismanagement of the forest and the water situation in California leads to predictable wildfires time and time again. It is absolutely ridiculous. These people are completely accountable for it, and I'll show you what Donald Trump had to say. So obviously, you know, people are going out and saying, how dare he say this? But tell me what in this Truth Social post is wrong whatsoever. Let's read it. Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snow that melts from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. Yes, as you know, what drives massive wildfires? Usually dry areas. California is currently dealing with drought. They're dealing with a water shortage. And what does Gavin Newsom do? He has an opportunity to bring in a bunch of water to the state. He says no. Why? Because he wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but didn't care about the people of California, right? So actually, ironically, the insane environmental regulations that a lot of these climate change people are constantly calling for contributed to the situation. But anyways, now the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand that this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is to blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, not firefighting planes. A true disaster. And that's right, it is a true disaster. And by the way, this is not the only issue that Gavin Newsom has dropped the ball on, because as Donald Trump has been talking about for years, another thing he does is he mismanages the forest, right? He refuses to clear out the brush that obviously, you know, dry brush is a catalyst for wildfires. He won't clear it out. And again, wonders why Trump has been talking about this for years. Take a listen for yourself.
And you've seen what happened. You've talked about the forest fires. Now we're permitting and cleaning up these forests so it will reduce the threat of forest fire as well as creating jobs in these communities.
We're all to do that in California, by the way.
Yes, sir.
California's a mess. We're giving billions and billions of dollars for forest fires in California. There's no reason for those fires to be like they are. They're leaving them dirty. It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry. And instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them. And we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for to fix. And the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests because it's disgraceful.
Yeah, again, it's almost like someone tried to tell you this for many years. You refuse to do anything about it, partially because Gavin Newsom is incompetent, partially because he's malicious, he's incredibly corrupt every time he tries to do anything that is allegedly supposed to fix the state. All it does is funnels a bunch of money to BS nonprofits that just squander it all. But then on top of that, I guess you don't want to do it because Trump is calling it out, even though he's right about this. Okay, that's why I say beyond a certain point, you have a few wildfires, maybe you notice the mistakes, you fix it. Okay, this keeps happening time and time again. They're getting worse. And that incompetent fool running the state has nothing else to say besides, oh, climate change. The Republicans won't do anything about climate change. So I guess I got to let everything in my state burn. I got to let all of the home insurance companies to leave the state, not even caring that, hey, they're leaving because of my policies. And, that's going to screw over the regular homeowners in my state. No, he doesn't care about any of this. By the way, here's also what Trump had to say today about the very same issue.
In California, Mr. President, during the pandemic, you often said that you didn't believe that you should bail out blue states that you believe were being mismanaged. Given your criticism of Governor Gavin Newsom, are you willing to work with him, and do you believe that federal aid should be provided to California for as long as it takes?
Well, it's very sad because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called a smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing. And we're going to get that done. It's going to finally be done. I got it done from the federal side, and he didn't want to sign it, but it's not going to happen again like that. There's no reason. Can you imagine? You have farmers that don't have any water in California. They have plenty of water. They don't have a drought. They send it out to the Pacific. And it's crazy. So
again, Trump is completely correct about this. I've not seen a single liberal offer a remotely valid response besides saying climate change, Trump is bad, because he's correct about this. He's correct. There's no defense for what Gavin Newsom is doing. Now, with that said, Gavin Newsom was asked about Trump's comments earlier today, and let's take a guess, guys. Comment your thoughts down below. By the way, while you're at it, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are new, okay? But do you think Gavin Newsom took any accountability in response to Trump's comments, or do you think that he virtue signaled and cried about it? I think you know the answer, but here's what Gavin had to say in response.
Phase. We're in the public safety phase.
I hate to even ask this question, but the president-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, it's people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools, families completely torn asunder, churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it.
That's all true, Gavin Newsom, so why don't you do something about it? Huh? It's not his fault that this is happening. It's your fault. And as Trump points out, no, this is not just random coincidences. This is not just a situation where there's nothing we can do, climate change, this is a thing that happens. No, you can do something about this. You refuse to time and time again. And here you once again have Gavin Newsom not taking a single ounce of credibility. I will say the one silver lining in this entire tragedy is this. At least this guy, I think his 2028 chances of running for president just got utterly demolished, because this country would literally not survive with the way this incompetent fool, and I don't want to say incompetent, I think he's extremely competent. I think this corrupt, malicious fool runs his state. You run a country like that in the span of 4 years, America's headed to total collapse. But luckily, because of this whole scandal, because it's such a bad look for him, I seriously doubt that's going to happen. But with that said, okay, what is the liberal response to all of this? Expectedly, as I said, it is all about climate change. Surely the fact that these forest fires are getting so bad every single year, you know, you would think sometimes, like look at Florida with the hurricanes, you would think over time, as you adapt to a naturally recurring disaster situation that happens in your state, your response would get better, right? Your firefighting abilities would get more competent, except it seems they're getting less competent. Well, of course, what is the excuse? The excuse is climate change. As you see here from Robert Reich, he's saying that Los Angeles received just 0.16 inches of rain since May 2024, the second driest period on record. Wildfires are now engulfing the city in January, but some politicians still claim the climate crisis is a hoax as they do the bidding of big oil. What planet are they living on? So surely, you know, it's not Gavin Newsom's fault. It's not the fault of, you know, the people managing the state of California. It's big oil and climate change why all of this stuff is happening. Well, guys, I will say, I think a mistake conservatives too often make is just ridicule these people without actually explaining with the science, with their beloved science, why they are completely and objectively wrong about this. So let's show you that. Okay, again, the claim is basically that the reason California is in a drought that is basically causing these wildfires to allegedly be so bad, is because of man-made climate change. It's because they're burning fossil fuels, etc., etc. That's why there's no water. That's why there's severe weather, all this stuff. Except when you actually take a look at the historical weather records out of the state of California, you will find that that is empirically and objectively not true. This is a very inconvenient graph for them, so we're going to show it here right now. This is a chart that measures the drought periods and the wet periods in the state of California since 800 AD. Now, you may be asking, how do we know since 800 AD? Because scientists can look at tree rings and essentially determine how wet or dry that year was. So on this graph, as you're seeing, the red areas indicate when there was a drought, the blue areas indicate when there was an excess of water, right? When it was a wet period. And as you can see right now, okay, just take a look at this for a minute. What do you notice around medieval times? Okay, 800 AD to 1000 AD, about 1100 AD to 1300 AD. Oh, wait a minute. Drought periods are not unprecedented in the state of California. They're actually incredibly common. Take a look at what else is kind of striking about this. So this tiny red blip you're seeing here on the end of the screen, okay, that right there, that is the current drought period that California is in. Now, it's also worth noting to the climate change activists that human beings began burning fossil fuels around the 1800s. And again, so what's the explanation here for all of the dry periods during medieval times? The other thing that I find particularly striking is look at the droughts that California went under before, again, human beings started the Industrial Revolution at all whatsoever. Notice how freaking long they are, okay? So from 800 to about 1050 AD, you had about a 200-year-long drought period. You had another one from about 1150 AD to like 1300 AD. And also notice how tall these red slopes are. You find also, not only were these droughts much longer than the current drought California is in, but they were much, much more severe. In other words, what's the point that I'm getting at? Droughts in California are completely normal, and long before human beings started burning fossil fuels, California in recent history, we're not talking about millions of years ago, we're talking about hundreds of years ago, had longer droughts and much more severe droughts than what's going on right now. So that's why I say it is completely pseudoscientific to claim that these droughts in California are unprecedented and it must be because of fossil fuels as the reason why Gavin Newsom apparently doesn't know how to manage a forest. By the way, if you think I'm lying to you, take a look at what the very words of the California state government have to say about it. Water.ca.gov right here. And take a screenshot of this because they might delete this very soon. It doesn't really agree with the climate change narrative. But paleoclimate records going back more than 1,000 years show many more significant dry periods. So in other words, what are we saying? Now, is climate change happening? Yes. We don't really know how much is man-made, how much is not, but the overall point is what? Again, Droughts are not unprecedented in California, and this is ultimately a complete diversion from the fact that Gavin Newsom doesn't know how to manage a forest. I encourage everyone right now, go screenshot this right here, because this is not a point that should be lost on anyone. They're going to make this massively about climate change. I think too often conservatives don't really know how to argue back on this issue. So there's your argument right now. California had worse droughts before human beings started burning fossil fuels. And if you don't believe me, trust the science. That's what the scientists are telling us, not what I am saying, okay? So with that said though, guys, I think our point has been made here. To make it about climate change is ridiculous, but to blame the failed Democrat leadership of California is absolutely appropriate, okay? And so Gavin Newsom absolutely needs to be held accountable for this. He can sit there and pretend to cry all he wants. He is causing this. His bad policies are causing this, and that's all that needs to be said, okay? With that said though, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.